Imagine spending the entire workday pouring concrete, repairing roads, or landscaping beneath the Texas sun. As the temperature rises, you begin to feel dizzy and confused. But stopping could mean falling behind or potentially upsetting your supervisor. You continue working because you don't feel like you have a choice. And for many outdoor workers across Texas, this is a real danger. The Texas legislature should require employers to provide outdoor workers accessible drinking water, paid shaded or cooled rest breaks, and heat safety procedures because these protections can prevent serious illnesses and death. First, I will explain the danger facing outdoor workers. Then I will describe the statewide standard Texas should adopt. And finally, I will show how this policy could protect workers and employers. According to a 2021 report from the Texas Department of Insurance's Division of Workers' Compensation, environmental heat caused 42 work-related deaths and 3,860 non-fatal cases requiring time away from work in Texas between 2011 and 2019. These numbers represent workers harmed by an exposure that often can be controlled through basic precautions. Outdoor laborers face an especially high risk. In a 2019 study published by the American Journal of Industrial Medicine, occupational health researcher Shu-Wen Sudong and her colleagues found that construction workers represented only 6% of the workforce, but accounted for 36% of occupational heat-related deaths. Physical labor generates additional body heat, while sunlight, humidity, and protective clothing make cooling down much more difficult. Heat illness can also become dangerous very quickly. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health explains that excessive workplace heat can cause dehydration, dizziness, confusion, heat stroke, organ damage, and even death. Confusion is particularly dangerous because an overheated worker may not recognize that they need help until they can no longer protect themselves and it becomes too late. Despite these risks, Texas does not have a statewide occupational heat standard guaranteeing water and rest breaks for outdoor workers. In 2023, Texas Tribune reporters Francisco Uranga and Aaron Douglas explained that Texas House Bill 2127 eliminated local ordinances in Austin and Dallas that had required 10-minute breaks for every 4 hours of work. OSHA had proposed a federal heat standard, but it is not currently enforceable nationwide. Therefore, Texas workers' access to adequate recovery time can still depend on an individual employer or supervisor. Now that we understand the problem, we can consider a practical solution. The Texas legislature should establish a statewide heat safety standard centered on water, rest, and training. First, employers should provide cool drinking water near outdoor work sites. On its Water Rest Shade webpage, OSHA recommends drinking approximately 1 cup of water for every 20 minutes of working in the heat instead of waiting until you feel thirsty. Second, workers should receive paid rest breaks in shade or another cooled location. Breaks should become more frequent as the temperature, humidity, and physical workload increases, and workers experiencing symptoms should be allowed to cool down without punishment or any loss of pay. And third, employers should create written heat safety plans. These plans should include worker training, gradual heat acclimatization, and emergency response procedures. These requirements are realistic because similar procedures have already been developed elsewhere. OSHA's proposed standard includes water, paid breaks, training, acclimatization procedures, and emergency procedures. The California Department of Industrial Relations already requires outdoor employers to provide water, shade when temperatures exceed 80 degrees, training, emergency procedures, and additional high heat protections. California's policy shows that employers can operate under clear, enforceable heat requirements. Now, imagine how Texas workplaces could change if these protections became or adopted. Workers would begin their shifts knowing where water and shade were located and when rest periods would occur. Trained supervisors could recognize signs of dizziness or confusion before the situation became a drastic emergency. Research suggests that these programs can create measurable improvements. In a 2020 peer-reviewed study published in occupational and environmental medicine, occupational health researcher Jason Glaser and his colleagues examined workers after their employer improved access to water and shade and strengthened its rest schedule. They found that among the workers performing the most physical, strenuous jobs, incident kidney injuries were actually 70% lower following the improved intervention. Now, that does not mean that every heat-related illness would disappear, but it does demonstrate that organized protections can substantially reduce harm. Employers would also benefit from having one clear standard. Recognizing heat stress early can also prevent an employee's symptoms from becoming an ambulance call, serious injury, or even death. This slide shows the choice that Texans now face. In the protected workplace, workers have water, shade, scheduled breaks, and trained supervisors. But in the unprotected workplace, a worker may feel pressure to ignore dangerous symptoms. Without a statewide standard, some employers may provide sufficient protections, while other workers receive only what their supervisors choose to give them. In closing, Texans can protect outdoor workers by guaranteeing access to water, heat-cooled rest, breaks, and heat safety procedures. Extreme heat has already caused thousands and thousands of occupational injuries in Texas, but a consistent statewide standard could substantially reduce this harm. Now that we know that the problem is preventable, there is one simple action that each of us can take. I'm asking you today to scan this QR code or visit the Texas Legislature's Who Represents Me website. And after entering your address, you can identify your state representative and your senator. Then send them the bolded message on the screen. No one should have to choose between completing a day's work and surviving the heat. Water and a few minutes of rest in the shade are small protections, but they could mean the difference between returning to work the next day or never going home again.